Episode 2: The Third Root Race and the Forgotten Powers of Imagination. Welcome, Radiant Ones, to Ancient the Architect TV. In tonight's transmission, we descend further back into time, beyond Atlantis, beyond the fires of conscious thought, to a land that does not exist on any modern map, a realm remembered not through geography, but through vibration, through soul memory. This is the story of Lemuria, the third root race. Not a race in the way we think today, but a phase in humanity's sacred unfolding, where imagination was the torch, and the soul still half-dreamed its way into form. What you are about to hear is not history in the common sense. It is memory, a metaphysical record etched not in stone, but in the Akasha, where the truth of our spiritual evolution remains forever accessible to the awakened mind. Let us walk softly, for we are now entering the dreaming flame. According to the esoteric currents preserved in the Akashic record, Lemuria was the cradle of the third root race, preceding Atlantis and preceding the rise of what we call thought. This race was not fully human as we understand it today. It lived in a twilight state, between sleep and wakefulness, between form and fluidity. The Lemurians possessed bodies, but soft, malleable, and glowing. They were not yet bound to the rigid bones of modern man. The earth itself was softer then. Even minerals had not yet crystallized to the hardness we now know. And so, consciousness moved like vapor, impressionable, receptive, embryonic. The Lemurian continent, as recorded by the seers, lay beyond modern cartography. We will not anchor it to a place on Earth. Instead, we anchor it in vibration, a frequency of soul development when spirit had just begun its descent into matter. In this epoch, language as we know it did not exist. The Lemurians communicated through soul images, pictorial impressions that rose from the inner world and radiated outward. They did not speak as much as they projected vision. Sounds existed, yes, but these were natural utterances, echoes of the life force resonating through their bodies, like the wind whispering through trees. These sounds were not symbols for objects. They were expressions of states, pleasure, pain, wonder, awe. The Lemurian utterance was like nature herself speaking, and yet, beneath this dreamlike innocence, there stirred a deep imaginative force. This imagination was not fantasy. It was a power, a direct faculty that could influence, shape, and respond to the world around them. To see was to know. To know was to build. The Lemurians did not engineer. They manifested. To move a stone, they did not calculate its weight. They observed its essence, perceived its density, felt its being, and acted with precise will, guided by instinctive soul knowledge. Will and imagination were one. They could command their own limbs with supernatural control. With will alone, they could steel their muscles or perform feats of endurance that would astound even the hardened warriors of later times. They were, in every sense, the magicians of form, shaping the world not through technology, but through alignment with the life force. But this life force was not yet individualized. It moved through them, like electricity through water. And so, the Lemurian did not yet say, I. They were still the dreaming limbs of the earth herself. As time flowed onward, a new challenge emerged: the need to awaken inner power. The Lemurian children were trained, not in intellect, but in the mastery of imagination and will. The boys were hardened, exposed to trials of fire, pain, and danger, so they could learn to endure the forces of nature and wield them with control. The girls were trained differently, not in resistance, but in sensitivity. They were brought into storms, exposed to beauty, to rhythmic vision, to silence. They learned to dream with focus, to channel the aesthetic rhythms of nature into inner soul fire. This separation of training awakened different faculties in each, and over time, a polarity developed between will and feeling, power and sensitivity, masculine and feminine. But this was not yet division. It was the preparation for integration. The feminine force in Lemuria held a central mystery. Women were the first to awaken memory, not factual memory, but soul memory. They could sense the rhythm of nature, the hidden undercurrents of the unseen. They became the priestesses of inner truth. They heard the trees, they felt the stones, and through them rose the earliest stirrings of religion, not as creed, but as reverence. It was from the lips of the wise women that rhythm and tone first emerged, not speech, but sacred utterance. They chanted, and the earth responded. They sang, and the people danced. These were not performances. They were acts of soul ignition. The soulfulness of nature, channeled through woman, was the first ceremony. It was the birth of sacred rhythm. And so the Lemurian temples were not temples of stone. They were circles of chant, fields of rhythm, groves of vibration. As the Lemurian epoch neared its close, volcanic fires rose from the earth, breaking apart the once unified lands. Lemuria was not destroyed in a single event, but unraveled through cycles of upheaval, both physical and spiritual. But before its final descent, a select group of Lemurians was chosen. Separated from the rest, they were guided, not just by instinct, but by a higher force, to carry the seed of the coming age. This seed would become Atlantis. These chosen ones bore within them the imprint of ancient will, but now tempered with memory, with reflection, with the first glimpses of ego. They were taught how to use the life force consciously, and thus they became the ancestors of the fourth root race. The feminine wisdom that had carried Lemuria now gave way to the rising masculine will of Atlantis. Together, they formed the polarity through which true thought could be born. So what does Lemuria teach us? It teaches us that imagination is sacred, that the soul, before it thinks, must dream, that feeling, rhythm, intuition are not primitive, they are primordial, foundational. Lemuria is not just a mythic land, it is the inner earth from which all spiritual culture arises. The mystery schools, the temples of divine rhythm, the chants that carried soul through sound, all trace back to this age. And most of all, Lemuria teaches us that woman was the first priestess, that the soul of woman was the cradle of memory, the guide of conscience, the guardian of the early fire of meaning. She did not dominate by strength. She tuned, she aligned. And so the law of the will, as it arose in Atlantis, was first purified by the sacred heart of Lemuria. And so, radiant ones, we leave Lemuria not as a place, but as a vibration, a deep note in the symphony of human evolution. We have now explored the third and fourth root races, from Lemuria to Atlantis, from dreaming to thinking, from rhythm to reason. But before both, before sound and sensation, there was something older still, a continent more spiritual than physical, known only as Hyperborea. In our next transmission, we will climb even further back along the golden thread, to the second root race, to the age when man was more light than form, and trace the divine radiation that first kissed this earth. Until then, remember, your memory is older than your mind, and your imagination is not illusion. It is the soul remembering its origin. This is Ancient the Architect TV, and this has been the Lemurian transmission.